Good afternoon, it's Caroline Stevens seeking the truth. On this afternoon's show, I've got Mark Anthony Taylor. We're following up on the Deutsche Bank revelations. And there's been a murder, hasn't there, Mark? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, for that intro. You see on the left here is a lady judge, Esther Salas, I think the pronunciation is. Her son was murdered a couple of days ago. Someone knocked at the door. The son opened the door. The son gets shot dead. Behind the son was the husband. Husband takes the bullet, and the gunman, dressed as a FedEx delivery man, runs away. The husband is trying to get help, even though he's got a gunshot wound. The Esther Salas is in the basement. She hears a pop, 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 doesn't know what it is. By the time she's gone to the door, son is dead and the gunman is nowhere to be seen. Then, as if by magic, within a couple of hours, this guy, Roy Den Hollander, is identified as a suspect. She tried his case about 5 years ago. He wasn't successful, but he's identified as a suspect. So the police go round to his house. He's dead of a gunshot wound to his head, which they say is self-inflicted. Well, not all point-blank shots to the face are self-inflicted, as we all know. You can be garroted these days and it not be self-inflicted. And he has a FedEx parcel in his car addressed to Esther Salas. And he's got a photograph of her too, found in her car, not on his person. And I presume that he's not dressed as a FedEx employee when they find him, because they never mention that. You would have thought that's one of the first things they'd say.
Can I just interrupt? If you are FedEx delivery man, you would have more than one parcel surely to deliver. So the fact that he has got just one parcel in his vehicle addressed to Esther Salas.
He wasn't a FedEx delivery man. Whoever the assassin was dressed up as a FedEx delivery man. Okay, but they obviously wouldn't be carrying 100 parcels around with them and driving an official van. This wasn't a FedEx hit. This was someone disguised as a FedEx delivery man. So,
Right.
So I presume he'd have the parcel in one hand, possibly with the gun concealed inside the parcel or underneath the parcel. So they'd open the door, he'd say, "Are you the Salases?" And then when they say yes, bang, 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 and it's all over. So the official narrative is this is like 90% solved and they know what happened. So the mainstream are telling you this is just a crazed anti-feminist lawyer who didn't like the judge, decided he's going to take her out and then do himself in. Turns out just a few days before the son's murdered, that there's a lawsuit that she has been handed with. So she's tasked to judge this lawsuit. Lawsuit's brought about by this guy called Ali Karimi. And guess what? It's against Deutsche Bank. And this lawsuit is about the Epstein money laundering into Deutsche Bank. And it turns out at the same time that Ghislaine Maxwell was laundering money into JP Morgan. It's funny how these names keep cropping up. So she was tasked to handle this lawsuit, and then 4 days later, a son shot dead. Okay, so this lawsuit comes after the New York State Department of Financial Services fined Deutsche Bank guilty of laundering money to Jeffrey Epstein. So you can see the URL here. Let's go to page 4, I think it is, section B. Okay. This is what this New York justice thing asserts, that Jeffrey Epstein had hundreds of millions of dollars. So presumably the legal system admits that he was not just a multimillionaire, but he had hundreds of millions of dollars. So some people said he had nothing. I think this is quite accurate. His friends included financial institutions, politicians, royalty, and billionaires. Deutsche Bank maintained a relationship with Epstein and related individuals and entities from August 2013 to December 2018. At that point, the bank decided to terminate this relationship following additional negative press related to Mr. Epstein's past criminal conduct. Now, December 2018 is not that long ago, is it? Just 18 months.
Oh.
So they say he was trafficking and abusing young women. So everyone admits this. He wasn't just, he was prosecuted for trafficking one girl, but the legal system admits that there were many women involved. And what Deutsche Bank were doing was to handling his accounts, and then they'd pay off $1 million to various women litigators, institutions. So he had millions of dollars just moved straight out of his bank account. Normally in Germany, if you shift, say, $10,000 around, your bank account gets frozen until you can prove that that's not money laundering. But with the likes of Epstein, he could move $1 million around and no one would blink. Now those dates, they're very important, 2013 to 2018. As I've said before, dates are crucial in litigation and criminal investigations.
Do we know whether Epstein, oh, right, you've cut it.
Okay, can you begin?
No, I was going to say, do you know when Epstein started the money laundering through Deutsche Bank? Have you got an approximate date? Are we talking 2013, or are we talking about way back before then?
According to that document, it had been going on for decades.
And have you been using other banks besides Deutsche? Because
yes,
we know
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan?
Yeah.
Is Barclays implicated in any shape or form?
Yes, it is, because the head of Barclays is Judge Esther, who was groomed by Epstein and handled the contracts to bring the money into JP Morgan. And Staley overrode the JP Morgan auditors. So Barclays, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank all have Epstein's skeleton in their closets. Actually, his dead body.
Now, this is really interesting because a friend of mine is involved with other Christians, and he wanted to set up an account with Barclays Bank. And Barclays Bank had the guy's accounts for 20 odd years. So he was known to them in a personal capacity. So he's approached Barclays Bank and asked them to set up some sort of charitable status account. And in this case, it will be, because it's a foundation, he wants them to look after an account where maybe something like 150 million euros would be paid in to then be paid out for altruistic purposes, for philanthropy. And they said no. So how come Epstein can get away with this, but some Christian can't, who's known to Barclays for 20 odd years, cannot set up a foundation to accept money, which is probably small fry in comparison to what Epstein has been, passing through the Barclays accounts. So there is obviously a two-tier system here, isn't there?
Yes, exactly. If you're at the friends of Epstein, if you're a Ghislaine Maxwell or a Prince Andrew, these things come easy like confetti. But if you're outside that group, then there's no opportunities. This is symptomatic of how the world is run. If you're insider, you get everything. You're 1% of the 1%. So all of the opportunities come to you. You just sit at home and you'll be told, open this supermarket and we'll give you £5,000. And of course, if you're not part of that clique, then opportunities just don't emerge. You'll never be part of the celebrity circuit. And of course, you've got to agree to keep secret all of these paedophile rings if you want to be part of that circuit. So my guess is your friend would never be. They didn't want your friend to have money, power, influence, because obviously once you've got that money, then you can set up websites, your own TV station, radio station. If you discover that there's paedophiles running the bank and you're an honest person, then you use your broadcast media to put the message out, and they don't want the message out. So no chinks in the wall, no chinks allowed. Anyway, back to this story. Okay, the period 2013 to 2020, when Deutsche Bank were at the height of laundering money for Epstein, you've got these three executives, Anshu Jain. Then he quit. Basically, Deutsche Bank had so much litigation against it, so much embarrassment. Anshu Jain was forced out. He returned to America, and then he became boss of Cantor Fitzgerald, the president. And then they replaced him with this guy called John Cryan, and then he didn't do too well, so then they replaced him with this guy called Christian Saving, the W pronounced as Fee or something in German. So Christian Saving. 2000 and Saving is already in power. So 2013 to the present day, these three guys were running the show. And so all of these people are incriminated in the anti-money laundering violations. So these are the three people whose, well, actually there's only two, John Cryan and Christian Saving. Their names are explicitly mentioned in this lawsuit to recover money due to Epstein laundering money through Deutsche Bank. So what that did was get the bank fined, damaged its reputation, and then investors in the bank want some of their money back that they feel is owed to them because they were forced into this, well, they were tricked into an unethical investment that cost them money and cost them reputation.
Hang on, an unethical investment. We're talking about banking here.
That's right, but some banks, you know, they probably didn't expect that their bank was laundering money for Epstein's paedophile ring, and we all knew it was rigging the markets, but we didn't know how far involved they were with these paedophiles.
Yeah.
So anyway, in 2017, turned up in the Birmingham Court. There's a judge there called George James David Worcester. And I said, I had this evidence that Judge Staley and Epstein together, they were blackmailing Parliament to put Staley in charge of Barclays. And that MPs had lied about that to the Daily Mail because they'd basically submitted to the blackmail. Barclays never sent a lawyer to that hearing, so they knew what was going on because all of the allegations were sent in electronic form to Linklaters, which is Deutsche Bank's lawyers, who then forward it on to the other defendants. So everyone knew that Barclays and its CEO were a good part of the subject of that trial, because I'd figured that if Epstein could blackmail Parliament to let Barclays get away with his, paedophile pal running Barclays, then they could. And Barclays had threatened a restraining order against me for suing Deutsche Bank for gold rigging. So I figured that they could have used that blackmail leverage to corrupt the courts, which is why the first judge was allowed to get away with so much misconduct. And what James Worcester, he listened to my arguments, he sat there nodding, yes, 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 yes. And then like in the final 5 minutes said, you've used the wrong font on your particulars of claim. might have been served electronically. You might be able to zoom in as far as you want, copy and paste, insert double spaces, change the font. But because I've used the wrong font, then I'm going to have a restraining order slapped against me.
Is the font relevant?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, I'm exposing major blackmail scandals. Judge Staley should have been arrested for receiving, well, basically kind of receiving stolen goods. Well, the stolen good was his wages as Barclays CEO, and should have been arrested for conspiracy to blackmail. There's enough evidence here to show that Barclays had undue power to get a restraining order. So what they did was to silence me, or tried to silence me, with a second restraining order. And then 2 years later, in 2019, the General Counsel for Deutsche Bank wrote to Worcester and said the restraining order is coming to an end, so we'd like to extend it for 2 years. And what I'd been alleging all this time is that Deutsche Bank had been rigging the gold and silver prices by spoofing on the COMEX, which is an exchange for trading gold and silver. And it turned out...
What do you mean by, did you say spoofing?
Spoofing is where you send a request to buy or sell to someone. Electronically, what happens is that the price immediately changes to what you're willing to buy at. So if someone says to the world, I'm going to buy gold at $1 million billion per an ounce, then for a tiny fraction of a second, the world global gold price is that high price. But what they then do is immediately cancel the order. So that order is now gone, but the price remains. So the world sees the price has changed.
Oh, so that's how you rig the price.
That's right. And of course, they're doing this electronically, so the cancellation can occur nanoseconds after the buy and sell requests. But they never actually sell or buy anything because they're cancelled. So they do that about half a dozen times, and the price has now gone up or down quite considerably. And of course, their own clients have contractual obligations to buy and sell when prices reach certain limits. So what they can do is force their own clients to sell stuff at them at a lower price. It's absolutely...
Oh, gosh.
This is absolutely criminal.
You've never actually explained it in that way before. So that's good for people, I think, who are watching to have an understanding of what rigging is all about.
That's right. So I claimed this back in 2014 in my original documents that they'd spoofed prices on the COMEX in order to force their own clients to sell. So in 2018, at the end of it, the CFTC fines Deutsche Bank $30 million for spoofing the prices, exactly as I had alleged all those years ago, 2014. I got there well ahead of everyone. And as they paid the fine, and then they sign off another restraining order against me to say, what I'm saying is totally without merit. And then subsequently, they've got fined for money laundering for Jeffrey Epstein. So obviously, when I went into James Worcester's court and I'd said Barclays had been doing dodgy deals with Epstein, Deutsche Bank knew damn well what I was saying was correct, and they knew that they were involved too. So they needed those restraining orders to stop the truth coming out before 2018. I mean, they were laundering during that trial process. So you can see how profoundly dishonest they were. This goes far beyond perjury. They've libeled me. They said I was a fantasist. They said this was all fanciful conspiracy theory, and they were damn well guilty. But what that shows is that these banksters, in particular Saving Cryan and Jane, is that they were all willing to bribe judge after judge after judge to get away with audit fraud, silver and gold ringing, anti-money laundering violations. Bribe, all of the way. Now we go back to Judge Esther Salas. Okay, so there's plenty of reports about her death. About her son's death. She was appointed by Obama. So some say, well, if she's an Obama appointee, then she's by definition corrupt. I think that's a bit unfair. She actually was responsible for trialing and jailing a Democrat leader called Joe Ferriero, which is, I think it's a Scottish name, I can't pronounce it. And that was 2015.
What had he done that was so bad compared to the other politicians?
He'd been bribing people and taking kickbacks.
How does that set him apart from the other politicians?
Well, he was a Democrat during Obama's reign. She was Obama's pick, but she was willing to put away this Democrat for 3 years. So that suggests to me that she wasn't that much of a slave to the Democratic Party. She did a proper job as a judge, and that she was willing to take someone who had been guilty of taking bribes and put him in prison. So that must have rung alarm bells for Deutsche Bank when they saw that a judge had been acting against a politician taking bribes. Now, what would happen if Deutsche Bank saw all these allegations? They know what I've been saying about them, and they're not suing me for libel because everything I've said has come out true. So they know they're as guilty as hell. This lawsuit doesn't just attack the bank, it attacks the executives. So they're facing exposure in a civil court, which could basically bankrupt them. But also, if they're shown to have acted criminally in the civil court, the judge has a duty to refer them to the prosecutors. So this civil court can end up as a way of getting them in prison. So they have every motive to bribe the judge, because if the lawsuit progresses honestly, they end up in prison. And we know they've got a history of bribing judges. Yeah. So what happens if, like, day 2 or 3 that this lawsuit is served and she handles it, by day 2 or 3, their lawyers are going to contact the judge to negotiate a bribe. And then, sure enough, her son's shot dead a couple of days after that. Now, when I looked at this, killing, and I thought there's 2 possibilities. There's one that kind of helps me in my lawsuit. Sorry to say that this possibility one is Deutsche Bank hires assassins. It would probably require multiple assassins. One would be outside Salas's house, probably just down the street, concealed, with a mobile phone or a walkie-talkie. Then you've got the second assassin would be outside of this Roy's house. And the one who kills Roy kills him first, because the very worst thing that could happen is that Salas's son is shot, and then say someone turns up at Roy's house and throws a party.
Yeah.
That would destroy the narrative. So it was essential. I mean, if Roy is killed first,
yeah,
someone turns up to the Salas's house to throw a party, then it's just some guy who's been shot dead, who, no one links it to anything because no one wanted him dead.
Yeah.
So he would be killed first. Then an SMS over the phone or a walkie-talkie. So that's a possibility for law enforcement to follow, is to check electronic transmissions in that area and those near Roy's house about the same time. So one would kill Roy, drop the photo and the FedEx thing in his car. Then the second assassin would get the message to say it's done, all clear. Okay, so he kills the son, and shoots the husband, but the judge is nowhere to be seen, and the judge is quite possibly armed, because judges, even in the UK, tend to have a lot of weapons around the house. So it was mission failure. So then this FedEx assassin runs off, but his FedEx clothes are covered in sweat and DNA. So those clothes have to be destroyed. They can't be transplanted onto the victim in time.
Yeah.
So obviously this is why perhaps FedEx clothes aren't found on or near the victim. If they had been, I think we'd have heard that. So the second best thing they could do is just leave a parcel and leave a photo. That's one possibility. The other one, which I thought might be embarrassing to me, if it turns out that this Roy just decided to shoot Salas dead, destroys his clothes, gets a fit of remorse and says, "Oh my God, what have I done?"
I'll kill myself instead.
I better incriminate myself. It's a good job I left that FedEx parcel on my car seat as I've gone off to burn my jacket. And then I'll put the shotgun to my head, blow my head off, and my life is over. And that's one possibility. I thought that was possibility 2. Then I thought possibility C. What if Deutsche Bank co-opted Roy to do the assassination and then killed him afterwards? And you might think, what's his connection to Deutsche Bank? Well, it turns out there is a connection. There's also a connection to Israel.
Da, da, da.
Da, 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 yeah.
Okay. I was thinking, you mentioned that this guy Roy had his case quashed 5 years ago, or an acquittal or what have you. What was the case?
Okay, there's Roy. Let's give him his proper name. Roy Den Hollander. They say he was some kind of anti-feminist activist supporting men's rights and men's employment. And there's got a big long list of things he was up to. And they're making it out that an anti-feminist, when he doesn't get his own way 5 years ago, is going to bear a grudge and kill Esther Salas. I'll leave it to the reader to study that part of his background, because it does go on and on and on. So he was kind of obsessed with different facets of men's rights. But what has recently been analysed was that the assailant, this Roy Hollander, previously worked for a US-Israeli intelligence-linked firm. So this article is on unlimitedhangout.com, unlimitedhangout.com by Whitney Webb. Just going to have to zoom in because my eyes aren't brilliant.
Want me to read it out? Because I've got to put my glasses on as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good start.
The print is not very clear. It says the case Salas is set to a...
I just wind this down a bit. Okay, you can start from here.
According to his website, Den Hollander once worked for Kroll Associates' Moscow office, where he managed and upgraded Kroll's delivery of intelligence and security in the former Soviet Union from 1999 to 2000. A few years prior, Kroll had won a considerable bid from the Russian government to locate money allegedly spirited out of the country by the directors of state enterprises to buy football teams. No, it doesn't say that bit. When they realized that privatization was inevitable, the Kroll executives in charge of the Russian portfolio prior to Den Hollander were E. Norbert Garrett, a former CIA station chief in Cairo and Kuwait, and Joseph Rossetti, former chief of security for IBM. During that period and prior to his hiring at Kroll, Den Hollander worked as a lawyer in Russia regarding legal and business issues. including international financing and marketing, and married a Russian woman he met during his time there that he subsequently claimed was part of the Russian mafia. Wow, goodness me.
Yes, so these people are saying he was So these people saying he was an anti-feminist kind of miss out the bit where he's investigating basically what was money laundering in Russia, who was laundering the money for Russia, all of the banks, including Deutsche Bank.
Oh, well spotted. My goodness me.
Okay, so Kroll Associates would be known as the CIA of Wall Street, Wall Street's private eye. And they hired former CIA and FBI officers, as well as former members of MI6 and Mossad.
Oh, right, okay. The usual suspects.
That's right. K2 Intelligence, the successor to Kroll Associates, had similar hiring practices, counting former FBI and NSA officials, alongside former high-ranking members of the Israeli Defense Forces. So this was, obviously Epstein was involved with Mossad. So there's the possibility that Kroll, via Deutsche Bank, Israel, was also involved with perhaps Epstein, one way or another. And it turns out this Kroll was actually quite involved with Deutsche Bank. This article's a bit too long to go to in this video. You can read it for yourself. But what this shows is that Salas would have been known to all of these agencies. Sorry, not Salas, Hollander.
Yeah.
His grievance with Salas would have been known, and they would have had his address to hand. They'd have had an intelligence report about him, so they could figure he was the patsy. They could have perhaps blackmailed him or bribed him to carry out the assassination. And what do you do after your man has assassinated someone? Well, you assassinate the assassin. It's an old trick.
The dog-eat-dog world out there.
That's right. So even if Hollander actually did the crime, that doesn't let Deutsche Bank off the hook. And it certainly doesn't let them off the hook for money laundering and for bribing judges. And there's every reason to believe that if Salas had refused to accept bribes, that she was going to be done in any case.
When you think about all the crimes that banks have allegedly carried out.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, well, guaranteed. The fact is that so many people have committed suicide on the back.
Suicided.
Well, the people, no, I mean, they've committed suicide. I mean, people because they've been bankrupted when banks have taken over their businesses. You know, I'm just thinking about the Lloyd's Liars, you know, when Noel Edmonds got involved. You know, I met lots of people who'd had small businesses or even medium-sized businesses, and then whatever happens, and then the bank comes in having no experience of running that sort of business before, and basically asset strips the business rather, and takes the business to the ground.
There's no question that poverty kills. Deutsche Bank were caught rigging agricultural commodities using the same spoofing techniques we discussed. That was not to keep prices low, but to make them high. And as a result, there were food shortages and riots in the third world not so long ago as a result of global manipulation of food prices by Deutsche Bank. So people do die from these frauds, and some could argue that makes the directors guilty of murder, directly or indirectly.
Absolutely, yeah. So how do we wrap this up then? What's happening with Salas? Is she under armed guard?
I don't know about Salas. I'm hoping actually that she stays on and does her job and basically fines against Deutsche Bank I don't see how they have any kind of legitimate defence. I don't see how the directors aren't implicated. And
how old was her son, by the way?
20 years old.
Oh, to lose your son at 20, my goodness.
That's right. Yeah, it's the worst, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping that these directors, they end up getting 20-year prison sentences. So even if they're not found guilty of prison, I'm hoping they'll just, be sent to some prison cell and isolated from the rest of the world where they can't do any harm, and until the end of their days. And I don't wish death on these people, because I want these people to talk. I want them to sing like canaries.
Okay, well, I hope that Sean of SGT Report sees this, because I know he's interviewed you previously on the Deutsche Bank scandal as well as myself. And hopefully the more people we can circulate this to, I mean, there's many people in the streets today. You can still go out there and you'll find people will think we're talking crazy talk, if you like. They would not believe in a million years that the banks are laundering money left, right and centre, and also involved in paedophile rings. So the more that Ghislaine Maxwell can sing and, give the mainstream media a good story, then perhaps we will get justice eventually. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Mark, before we wrap this up?
I think it's all coming undone for the global elite. I think their master plans have failed. Their COVID scare tactics have backfired. There's no vaccine in sight. We all know from the flu vaccine that every flu jab damages the immune system, increases the likelihood of getting dementia. So the chances of them being able to force 6 jabs a year on us to make us safe, I think that's rapidly diminishing. But the big fraud right now isn't actually selling a vaccine to people. The big fraud is that they keep getting money from the government to research vaccines that they know haven't a chance of success. Not 1% of 1% chance of success. And yet all of these big pharma companies keep on getting public research grants. I think it works out about £150 million a year from this country. There's 200 countries around the world, so that's a nice little earner for Gates to just research vaccines endlessly that don't have a chance of working.
Yeah.
The Black Lives Matter movement has basically gone nowhere, because everyone knows that they were just white Marxists in charge, trying to take over society. So all of their plans coming undone, and I think we're getting somewhere. It's just whether we'll be in total poverty and financial chaos by the time we get somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they are planning another CV wave between now and Christmas, and then there'll be, I think they're talking about floods now, aren't they?
There's going to be a massive flood of people on the dole queues very, very soon. What they've done with the COVID lockdown has been an absolute total disaster. But it's actually just a disguise for the banking collapse that basically happened at the start of the year. They shut down the economy so slow that people didn't need to move the money around so quick, so the collapse was hidden, but it's revealed in a £2 trillion bailout in this country alone. 50 billion goes to the furlough scheme and 1.95 trillion goes to the bankers. But the consequence of that is that we're going to see a very large negative interest rate very soon. So anyone who keeps their money in their bank, say for 5 years, will lose 15% over 5 years. So no pension scheme will function at all. No government bond or any other kind of bond will function at all. So they've destroyed any dreams they had of forcing us into a cashless society because they've completely destroyed electronic banking. And they did it to themselves.
Well, let's hope so anyway. Let's hope it has destroyed the banks. Okay, Mark, thank you so much for your interesting information. And let justice prevail.
Okay, thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
And everyone click like.
Oh. Caroline Stevens, Seeking the Truth. And as Mark Anthony Taylor says, please tick like, please do subscribe, and please do have a look at some of the other videos that Mark and I have done regarding Deutsche Bank. And have a good day. Take care and see you again soon. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you.